Welcome to the Stories Told podcast. This is episode 111. The Storm Breaks. This is the Stories Told podcast. Two authors talking about stories in movies, TV, and of course, books.
I'm Michael Grayford. I write action-adventure stories in fantasy and sci-fi worlds, sometimes for younger readers and sometimes for adults. And I try to always inject at least a little bit of humor.
And I am author E.W. Barnes, and I write action-adventure, time travel novels, and space opera science fiction. Thousands of years, thousands of worlds. But be forewarned, beyond here, there will be spoilers. Are you ready for the adventure? Let's begin. Welcome back to the Stories Told podcast. I'm author E.W. Barnes, and with me is author Michael Grayford. And today we're talking about the story told in Andor Season 2, episodes 7, 8, and 9. And as a reminder, this podcast episode will contain spoilers for Andor. If you've not seen Andor and you don't want spoilers, go to the playlist for the Stories Told podcast. We've got lots of fun podcasts to listen to. And then when you're ready to listen to us talk about Andor, please come back because, wow, this show is good. How are you doing today, Mike?
I am doing wonderful. How are you?
I'm doing well, thank you. And what's new in your writing world?
Writing world. I am still working on early stages of Zara Book 3. I'm very much a plotter and an outliner, so I'm just thinking of what the major turns of the story will be. In particular, like the climax. I always want to know like how the story is going to wrap up before I start writing it, so I know like where to write toward. So I'm working on that. I have a lot of ideas, like things that I want to happen, sort of settings and character stuff. So I'm just trying to make it all together into a plot that will make sense and have a satisfying conclusion, and also lead into book 4. I'm kind of trying to think of 3 and 4 somewhat together because I know kind of where it's going. So I want to make sure I flow into that and do proper setups for that story as well. So, yeah.
And that's smart. You know, that's one of the drawbacks of being a discovery writer, because I do, like we've said before, have a 30,000 foot level idea of where I want my stories to go and where I want my series is to go. But when I'm on the ground, just writing and letting the story drive what I'm writing, it means that sometimes I will need to go back to the other stories that I've written in the series and sort of fill in a little bit so that there's a little bit more foreshadowing or groundwork laid for wherever the twist has taken me. And if I'm really busy or I'm really tired, that may not happen as quickly as I want. And I know that one of my big worries is that as a discovery writer, and these ideas just keep popping in my head, and this has happened before, when I release the series or release a story, I then, like, a couple weeks later, think of something that, I should have done that.
Yeah.
To make the story that much better.
Some of that.
And there's always that. And that's nonstop. That never ends. It doesn't matter how long the story's been out. I always think to myself, I should have done that, which is, I love being a discovery writer because it's a lot of fun when I come up with stuff that I really am enjoying writing, and it's very invigorating and very energy producing and creativity producing, and it's a lot of fun. But the other edge of that sword is that I'm always doing that even after I've published, and then that then becomes not so fun.
Yeah, you can't avoid that to some extent, and especially if you're doing a series and you think, one book back, 2 books back, or something you want to do in the next book. They think, I should have set this up better in the previous book. Even if you outline, you're going to do that.
Because you didn't think of it. Totally hear you. So, and actually, not much is going on in my writing world for the same reason. Still sort of almost finalizing marketing. I've actually been creating I don't want to say a Gantt chart, but definitely a schedule and filling in all of the scheduling of the kinds of marketing that I want to do. And so that, I've been using Notion. Have you ever used Notion?
No, I looked into it briefly, but I never, took it on as a...
It has a little bit of a learning curve, so that chewed up a lot of my brain power to kind of figure out how this works and how the program thinks in a way so that I can understand it's whatever it thinks is intuitive that isn't intuitive to me, that I can then figure out how to do it. So there's been a little bit of learning curve to that, but I am over that learning curve now. I am over the sort of marketing learning curve and figuring out how I want to put all this information and structure and organize how I want to do this. So I'm definitely on the downward slide of, okay, I've got this and I'm ready to go. Kind of thing.
Very cool.
So it's a good feeling.
I'd love to see that when you're done with it.
I would be happy to share it with you. What interesting stories have you come across lately in books, movies, or television?
I've been watching the Daredevil Born Again series on Disney Plus.
Okay.
Following off of the Daredevil Netflix show.
And how is it?
I guess those shows were loosely tied to the MCU. Every once in a while they'd make some small reference, but they were mostly kind of their own thing. And this one seems to be sort of carrying along. I'm really enjoying it. But
Good.
I also enjoyed the Netflix series, and this feels like it carries on from that really well. Yeah, I think they're doing a good job. And what stories have you encountered?
I am still working through a Doctor Who a day. I'm almost to the end of the 11th Doctor's series. So we're in the Clara series now, and I've been working through that. And I have skipped a few things. There are a couple things I'm not that crazy about with the Clara episodes, so I have skipped some things. And I feel like there was something else I wanted to make sure I told you that I was watching, and my brain is just gone. Oh, I did start watching the Doctor Who because you said it wasn't bad.
Oh yeah, the new season.
Yeah. So I don't know which one I'm on. I'm either 2 episodes in or 3 episodes in, but I am enjoying it. It's been fun.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, I think the last one I saw
continues with the quality of the last episode I saw.
Well, and I think it's Stephen Moffat who's doing the writing. He's back doing the writing. I don't know that for sure, but he was the one that did the 11th Doctor series, and that's my favorite. I really enjoy that one. Yeah. So the last episode I saw had to do with a movie theater.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
Oh, it was funny with the animated character.
Yeah, and had some real fun fourth wall crossing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, and I'm reading. We do have a book that we are going to be talking about on the podcast in a few weeks. I think it's okay to mention it to folks. You know, we have to obviously read these books ahead of time before we can talk about them, and that takes a little bit longer than, watching television episodes or movies. So we're going to be talking about the H.G. Wells story, The Island of Dr. Moreau, in a couple of weeks. So I've started reading that, and yeah, that's about it.
Yeah, I've started that as well.
It's going to be fun to talk about that.
Yeah, it's always interesting going back to something long ago.
Yeah,
very, very different style.
I looked it up. I think it was 1896.
So this is probably the oldest story we've discussed then.
I don't know. I think our discussion of the Edgar Allan Poe short stories were older. But there's a similar style.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's true. Different way of writing. Yeah.
Are you ready to talk about Andor?
Yes, let's do it.
Today we're talking about the story told in Andor Season 2, Episodes 7, 8, and 9. And I am going to skip the description of the series because you can hear it a couple times in the podcast episode for Episodes 1, 2, and 3, and the podcast episode for Episodes 4, 5, and 6. So I'm just going to go ahead and skip it. And let's just go ahead and jump into, and the last time we had this conversation, we didn't actually break this up in a real formal, structured way about what we liked and we didn't like. We had more of a discussion. And I think because this is an ongoing series where we're just covering a couple of episodes, that actually works better for us. What do you think?
Yeah, no, I agree completely.
Yeah. So let's just go ahead and talk about these 3 episodes. Did you enjoy them?
Oh, this was my favorite chapter of this season so far. I think it was done so well. It was very impactful. We finally get to see things coming to a head. A lot of storylines playing out. Yeah, it was really good. Very, very intense scenes. I mean, I think it was the middle episode, the middle chapter, or the middle episode, I guess, with the battle. The whole lead up and the tension building on Gorman, and then seeing that play out. Everything was there. It was just, so well done. Yeah, I really, really like these episodes.
Yeah, I I agree 100%. I was so, and this means, I haven't actually yet processed this enough to be able to really appreciate the writing. I intellectually know there's a lot of writing. Emotionally, I am still hooked into these episodes. I have not yet processed them into a place where I know they fit in my worldview and in my psyche, because that's how good these episodes are. They have embedded themselves into my psyche. I'm trying to find the name of the middle episode 8. Anyway, I don't know the name of that episode, but that's the middle episode. There's 7, 8, and 9. And that middle episode, while I was watching it, I was so tense that my stomach hurt. And then at the end of it, I broke down in tears. And every time I was like, pull it together, it's just a television show. And I would start to cry again. It was
rough.
It was rough. And that is a sign that it was, and you mentioned this when we were talking about this a little bit off the recording, that's a sign of such good writing. And I agree 100%. Such good writing. It drew me in and then carried me away.
Yeah.
I thought it was brilliant the way that the writers portrayed the Empire as so knowledgeable and skilled in tapping into the human natural instinct to divide the world into us and them, and then use it for manipulative purposes. And they didn't say it outright. It was very much a show, don't tell. So show, don't tell.
Yeah.
But it was clear that they knew exactly what they were doing, and they did it with precision. And the people they were manipulating just lockstepped right into what they were being manipulated to do.
Yeah.
And a couple of people recognized what was happening and tried to stop it, but it was...
Yeah, it was too late.
Yeah, it was unstoppable force of emotion that the Empire was tapping into, and it was terrifying to watch, and deeply disturbing to watch, and heartbreaking.
Yeah, totally. And the casual way the Empire was discussing it was like,
Yes.
okay, before it even played out, they knew where it was going. It's like, okay, we're going to be done there. You're going to move over here afterward. Like, they already knew how the dominoes were going to fall.
Yep.
And we just get to see it go.
There's a line from Deep Space Nine, Star Trek Deep Space Nine, where Damar, you remember the character of Damar?
No.
He's a Cardassian, and he's talking to Kira, who's a Bajoran. And the Cardassians occupied Bajor for 50 years and were brutal, very much in the way that we're seeing here in Andor. And Kira was a freedom fighter. She was a rebel against this occupation. And then Cardassia becomes an occupied planet, and Kira's helping them figure out, the rebels on Cardassia figure out how to function as a rebellion. And at one point, because of the rebellion, this Cardassian character, Damar, his wife and son are murdered by the occupiers. And he says to her the line, the casual brutality of it. And that's what was ringing in my head as I was watching this on Andor and watching the Empire do this. Casual brutality. Just, this is their 9 to 5.
And throwing their own novice troopers to the wolves.
Purposefully in there, knowing that they are going to react. Because that's why they went in there, to react. They sent them in there to react. And their sergeant was like, these guys are fresh, you can't do this. And the guy's thinking, yeah, I can, because they're going to do exactly what I need them to do, is to react to their fear under pressure and shoot. Seasoned soldiers would not shoot, because they would understand that these people were unarmed. There's a better way to handle this. They would wait for orders. They would wait to really understand what was going on. They would have better muscle memory, I guess is a good word for it, of how to respond in this situation. But unseasoned, fresh soldiers are just going to react because their emotions are running high, and they don't have that muscle memory of how to respond.
Right.
And that's what the orchestrator of this whole thing was counting on.
Yeah, and they weren't valued, right? They were just...
It was so ugly. It was ugly and heartbreaking, and it was all the people there in that space were being used in an ugly way.
Yeah, and along that lines, we get to see Cyril's storyline play out.
Yep, in a very shocking and unexpected way.
Yeah, I liked how he finally saw Cassian, and it just like broke him at that moment.
Yeah,
he just goes nuts, and Cassian's like, "Who are you? Why are you attacking me?" I thought that was, it's not funny in the moment, but it's interesting how they set that up and
it
played
was
that
so
out.
sad.
Yeah.
And just at the moment when Cyril looked like he was going to be able to connect,
Yes.
he's killed.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that was shocking. I actually gasped out loud.
Yeah.
That is not what I was expecting to happen. I was really expecting Cyril to. I was expecting his arc to go further and to be a little bit more complex, maybe. Yeah. And it wasn't. It was done.
Yeah. And we get to
And you get
see the cracks
Edie
forming in Dedra's emotional state now.
Yep.
Interesting to see how that plays out.
Yeah, but you know what? I don't think they're going to do much with it. I was really expecting Cyril to have, like I said, a complex arc. And now because of it wasn't, I'm thinking maybe Dedra's isn't going to be that complex either.
Yeah. I don't know. We'll have to see how it goes. I'm wondering what they're going to do with that character. If she's just going to be limited to this show, or if she'll make an appearance somehow somewhere else, or we'll see how it plays out.
I did think it was interesting that they showed Edie crying.
Yes.
Like she finally, at that moment, recognized that she actually loved her son, which is really sad.
Yeah. Exactly. She finally realized what was going on. Switching over to another character, we get to see Mon Mothma now.
Yeah.
Fully committed. She's like, there's no possibility of return at this point. We see her set up for, Rogue One and Star Wars. See her getting into position for that. I loved how she was shocked at Cassian killing the ISB agents. Like, what did she think was going on all this time?
I know. That didn't ring true for me.
There's a couple things that didn't ring true for me with her.
She knows that Takolma was killed. She knows that killing is happening.
I think she had been so separated from it, it was so abstract for her, living on Coruscant, among the elite, that the visceralness of it hadn't sunk in with her yet. But like you said, there's some things we can talk about when
we're talking about her being shocked at the killing. There were two killings. There was one that was an ISB agent that was trying to arrest her, and the other one was her ISB plant driver. Now, I think when there's a person holding a gun at you, and they're shot, your first reaction is going to be relief, not shock. So that was the one I think that there shouldn't have been shock. There should have been just sort of, I think maybe relief and overwhelm. I think shock would have been acceptable for her driver because she did have a kind of sort of a little bit of a relationship with him. It was a dancing around, I know who you are kind of thing, but she still was with him for a long time, years. That one I can see the shock. The two together, that's what I said, didn't ring true.
Yeah. All right. What other characters do we? Well, obviously there's Andor. What did you think about, he's deciding to get out? I think that for me, that was fully understandable. He's been through a lot already at this point. But then we have Bix changing that up. Makes a decision for him.
I totally understand what they're trying to do. Having the girlfriend die as a motivator to stay with the rebellion is a bit of a trope that can be seen as overlooked, or wife, or significant other, or whatever.
Yeah,
it is a trope that is overused, and so I kind of get where the writers wanted to avoid that.
And I think it was expected by most people watching. Like, well, we know we haven't seen this character before. She's not in Rogue One, so we just assume that she's going to die because everyone else is going to die.
And again, like we talked about in the last podcast, it makes sense because in order for Rogue One to really play out the way it did, he really needs to be untethered to any personal connections. That really needs to be the case in order to make that story really work. So we always kind of knew that Bix was going to not be there anymore. I was actually thinking when she was there smiling at him after he returned, in her when she was being quiet and she's listening, that she actually had developed some kind of an illness or a disease caused by the torture that she went through, and that she was dying. And that way it isn't like she gets shot or somehow killed by the Empire and then triggers him to, commit to the rebellion. But it's just like, and to me, that would have worked, even though it was a significant other dying and leaving this person to be committed to the rebellion. But it kind of would have worked because it was like another example of the long-term insidiousness of the Empire, for her to die from something that they planted in her, purposely or non-purposely, when they tortured her. That would have made more sense to me and would have worked. But this sort of just, I'm leaving so that you'll be fully committed to the rebellion thing, didn't make any sense because there was no guarantee he would have done that. She has no guarantee he wouldn't just steal a transport and go find her, because that's what he would do.
Yeah, that's true. I do feel like the story around her character this season has been a bit loose. We saw the end of the last chapter where they go and kill the doctor guy, right? There was like no build up to that. There was no planning. There was just like out of the blue almost, other than her just being tortured by it mentally. And then same thing here. It's like there wasn't much buildup. Had we seen her talking to Luthen behind his back or something that she's committed? Like, where was her commitment to this? We didn't see it.
Well, the only thing we saw was, and they did put this in the sort of recap so that we knew, is that if we're going to do this, I want to win. If I'm going to give up all this, I want to win. So that, I think, was supposed to be her commitment. But I agree. I don't think it was. Yeah, I don't think it was commitment to the rebellion. It was just commitment to fighting the Empire. And those are two different things, I think.
Yeah. And there's also the, if we're going to do this, like, well, do you have to do it? I mean, you don't have to do it.
Yeah.
Like, everybody you know is pretty much dead at this point. You could just, bugger out. You've done your part. I get not doing that, obviously, but I just wanted to see more buildup of that from her character.
Yeah.
I will say her little, message that she leaves for him at the end is a bit heartbreaking because they're not getting back together. We know how this ends for him.
Yeah.
So that aspect of it,
I'm trying not to think about that right now.
Yeah, I thought the lead up to Mon's speech was really good,
as well as the Empire's response to it was really good.
As far as that, like things that I think could be improved on that aspect of the story, I didn't buy that they would only just be now looking for listening devices. I mean, Mon's been plotting for years, and it's like, oh, I better look for a hidden bug. And like, nah, that doesn't make sense. I mean, they're planning a rebellion. She would have been scanning for bugs all the time. Also, I didn't buy that she would be dumb enough to destroy the bug. Like, you could use that to feed false information, or at least just leave it and not raise any red flags now that you know it's there.
Yeah.
Why would you give them a message that, oh, we found your bug and I just killed it?
Yeah.
Like, she wouldn't have done that. They could have had the kid destroy it, or it get dropped and damaged. Some other thing could have happened there that would have been more believable. So yeah, there's a few things around her storyline, that and her reaction to the killing, that maybe could have been tweaked a bit. But I did like the setup for it and the suspense building.
I liked it too. I also thought that this whole reveal that her assistant was working for Luthen thing was a complete waste of plot. Nothing changed.
No, you're right. Yeah, nothing changed, and she's like all mad and she can't trust him. It's like, he's been with you there all this time, working with you, done nothing against you. Like, why now all of a sudden they're like, oh, well, I can't trust you. I'm going to.
Yeah. And then in the end, he ends up joining her when she's extricated from the Senate, when she escapes the Senate. Yeah. So, and maybe there will be character development for this down the road. I don't know. I really want to know what's going on with Clea. She seems to be the one who's issuing orders.
Yeah. She's got a lot going on. That's for sure.
Yeah. So I'm looking forward to hopefully getting some more on her, because she seems to be telling Luthen what to do and he doesn't. I thought you get the impression Luthen's in charge, but I think it's Clea.
Oh, interesting. I got that just like she's so in deep, so connected, like completely 100% connected and knowledgeable that he has no choice but to listen to what she says. Maybe. That's kind of the feeling that I got.
It's going to be interesting when we get her backstory.
Yeah. I thought this chapter had a little bit more of the Star Wars feel, with the TIE fighters and the stormtroopers. And
we had some
like
Force.
A little touch of the Force. We got to see K2SO.
Yep.
He gets introduced to these people. That was fun. I did want a little bit more from Cyril. I will say I wanted him to have at least a moment of redemption, where he gets to help the rebellion, doing something. Because like you said, he was just about there, maybe. And then boom, he's gone. Yeah. That was a little disappointing. As good as the shock was, I did feel a little bit disappointed in that, given how much time we'd spent with that character.
Yeah, I agree. And seeing how he became a complex character and how his time on Gorman had added layers to his understanding of what was going on. Yes, I would have liked a more complex plot. I agree. Any other thoughts, or should we talk about theme here?
Yeah, the theme's interesting. I mean, obviously there's the ongoing theme, right, of pushing back against authority. I think there was also an element in this chapter about commitment, being committed to, the cause. Cassian was committed until he wasn't, and then Bex made that decision for him. Cyril was committed until he realized he was duped, and then he wasn't. Yeah. And then we perhaps maybe see Dedra's commitment faltering or not. I guess we'll see where that goes. And then Mon Mothma becomes irreversibly committed.
Yeah, that's good.
And of course, Luthen is all in. He has been.
But
I think there's an element of that. Yeah.
And Bix, she's so committed, she's willing to give up Cassian.
Yeah, exactly. I think that was a part of it. And then, there's the overall message of, I think in this chapter we see particularly, there can be no half measures when fighting tyranny. It's like you got to go all in, which ties to that commitment.
Yeah. Yeah.
What elements did you find? What themes?
Your theme is really good, and I think your theme is the best overarching theme for these 3 episodes. What I wrote down was I was very struck by the line of the hotel clerk who recognized Cassian as someone who had been there a year before. And he said to Cassian, his last line to Cassian was, "Rebellions are built on hope."
Yeah.
But as I was watching that episode and the episode after, welcome to and I did pull up the episode title. So 8 is called "Who Are You?", which reflects Cassian's question to Cyril, and then Cassian's comment to Mon Mothma, "Welcome to Rebellion." As I was watching that, I wrote an additional line here. So rebellions are built on hope, and then I wrote, "but are born in despair." Because that was the sense when we left, "Who are you?" And also with "Welcome to the Rebellion," this feeling of despair, of there's nothing that can be done. When the massacre on Gorman took place, and then Mon Mothma being the only one who recognizes that this is a massacre and a genocide, there are elements of despair there.
Yeah, I liked the moments with the hotel as well. It's another good example of show don't tell and having characters who feel alive and are doing their own thing. It's like you have to get explanation, right? We just saw this character's observant and smart and knows what's going on and is in, right?
Yeah.
He knows what's happening and he's on board. I thought that was great.
Yeah. And now he's probably dead.
Yeah, probably.
So as a writer, what do you take away from Andor Season 2, Episodes 7, 8, and 9?
To me, it's about something we've talked about before so many times, which is setups and payoffs. We've been building to these moments, right? They've been putting the pieces in place so that as we approach the climax, things start falling like dominoes, one after another. And I think they did that so well here.
I agree with that. And I agree with your comment about show don't tell. The note I made was beautiful destruction, because all of the infrastructure that these people are accustomed to in the Empire is being destroyed. And like you said, there's been the setups for it, and now here we get the payoffs. The destruction is the payoff of what we knew was coming. And it's so beautifully done, so beautifully written. And by beautiful, I don't mean that it's, lovely or lyrical. I mean it is powerful and intense and grabbing. I mean, really holding you. And that's what I mean by beautiful. It's skilled. The beauty of the skill of it.
Yeah. They did a great job.
Thank you for joining us as we talked about these story told in Andor Season 2, Episodes 7, 8, and 9. A big thank you to our Patreon supporters and all our subscribers. We're so grateful for your support and your encouragement. The Stories Told podcast is available on multiple podcast platforms, and we thank you for liking and subscribing or following, depending on where you're listening. It may not be a big deal to you, but it means a lot to us. If you have a favorite book, movie, or TV series you'd like to suggest for the podcast, leave a comment on the YouTube channel, and that link is in the show notes. You can find Michael Grayford at michaelgrayford.com and E.W. Barnes at 1000years.com, and those links are also in the show notes. Join us next time as we talk about the last 3 episodes of Andor Season 2, Episodes 10, 11, and 12. Thanks so much, Mike. This was a lot of fun.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to the next one.
Yeah, me too. And we'll see you next time on the Stories Told podcast.